And it was a very, very frightening looking sword. The sword is called the Sword of Scimitar.
Okay, so to those of you who have made it this far, I have something very important to add that will help validate the entirety of this prophecy and add to Ken Peters' point about the kind of sword that was being used to behead Christians. Guys, check this out because symbolically, this is huge. As of September 15th, 2020, a new coin was commemorated to reflect the peace treaty. I would say the fake peace treaty, because never forget, you are the temple of God, not some plot of dirt in the Middle East. But I want you to take a look at this coin that Trump just hosted a signing of. Look at this. First of all, take a look at this Sword of Scimitar. Take a good, long, hard look at that handle and the shape of the sword. On this very coin is the bottom of this very type of sword. This sword has deep ties to open persecution of Christians. It also is tied to the secret society known as the Shriners, a 33rd degree Freemasonry club. As well, the coin symbol includes facial recognition. Do you see that? That is this. It includes biosurveillance. And I see what looks a whole lot like a VAX shot right here, right? These zeros and ones are computer language, of course. And there, you see, are the gears. So they will be using all of these aspects of surveillance to turn their gears to promise. What do you see at the top? The dove of peace, right? But then, of course, there are the satellites right next to the Wi-Fi symbol. So they are telling you here that they are intending to, whether they tell us or do it, use the Wi-Fi millimeter wave through the satellites. Okay? They will give you promises of peace with the dove at the top, but is right next to, get this, the highest placement on the coin, the planet Saturn, which is the god of these people. Saturn and its six-sided magnetic pole is directly tied to the 5 and 6 pointed stars and none other than Satan himself. Guys, they have to show you who they worship. But back to the dream.
And then I saw this table that was a little bit longer than the average human being and a little bit wider. And my wife said she wasn't going to renounce her faith in Jesus. She began to preach powerfully, and she began to just rebuke the devil, and you name it. I mean, she was doing it. And so they got angry and strapped her down on this table. By the way, it was like this, face first. So she was looking up to the sky with this man standing behind her with this sword.
As I got up to the door, I wasn't scared. Thank goodness, I found the Lord, and there was a sense of peace that I knew that I was going to be with the Lord soon. So I didn't freak out like a lot of these people. So many of us entered the room, and then the door shut behind us, where it was a big round room, really big, real tall ceilings. And in the middle of it was a guillotine. Now they were putting black bags. Once you approached and were next in line, they would put a black bag over your head, lay you face down, and mind you, the whole time, these guys are hollering at you, just take the mark and we'll take you out of here and we'll feed you and this will be over and all that. And there were a lot of people who, unfortunately, did, for fear, they gave in. When I entered the room, I felt the presence of God with me. I didn't feel alone. When I got up to the next in line, they went to go put the bag over my head, and I told them no, I didn't want the bag. And as a matter of fact, I don't want the bag, and I don't want to be put face down. I want to see it coming down. And I said this because I felt the Lord with me. I knew what was coming, and I wasn't afraid. And I was hoping by being bold and strong and stand for the Lord that it might help some of those other people that were just so scared.
He took the sword and chopped her head right off, right in my presence. I saw it. I have purposely asked the Lord tonight, please don't let me bawl up here. Please don't let me weep and cry. Because what I saw happen to my wife, it gripped me, and it still grips me to this day. I had just witnessed my wife being executed. And I was very grieved, but to be very truthful with you, I was more afraid of what was going to happen to me next than the fact that my wife had just died. And I know that sounds very selfish, but if I told you any differently, I'd be lying and God would deal with me. I was more concerned about my life than her dying right then. I was very, very afraid. And I knew that now I'm going to die. And I knew that in my mind, I could not do this.
In my dream, I'm in a concentration camp with my family. In the building, I started praying and I said, Lord, I just don't want to see their faces. That's what I'm scared of the most, is their faces. So I said that prayer, and then we walked into the building, and they hadn't showed up yet, and there were 2 chopping blocks, and then the door opened and they started to walk in. And as they started to walk in, this amazing thing happened. This sheet of glory, like a fabric, came down over me, and I couldn't see their faces. And I knelt and put my bling. But then he did. He cut my head off faces. And it's not hard. It's not hard at all. And I said, giving birth is much harder. Why were we ever afraid of death? Why were we ever afraid of dying for him? It's really not to start crying and going,
hand gripped my shoulder. As soon as this hand gripped me, I got very warm and the chills left me, and it was as though my mind could now see and kind of comprehend clearly what was going on. But this was a very solid hand, and it gripped my shoulder, and warmth and peace began to flood through me. After a few moments, I turned back, and there was the Lord Jesus Christ standing behind me. And then all of a sudden, He looked me in the eyes. He looked at me very, very sternly. It wasn't like a reproof or conviction, but it was more of just Him looking and peering into my life. And the most unusual thing occurred to me. At the very instant I looked at Him, His eyes were not brown or green or blue or anything like that. They appeared to be red like fire. Somehow at that moment I was able to realize that Him looking at me was actually looking through me, and He knew everything of me. He knew my strengths. He knew my weaknesses. He knew every lie deep down inside of me. He knew every deception. It was a very intense moment. I wish I could say that seeing Jesus at that moment made me very happy. It didn't. It made me very fearful. I understand now what the fear of the Lord is because of that experience. A few moments after realizing this, realizing my own depravity, He spoke to me and He looked sternly into my eyes and He said, "Fear not, my son, for death will never hold you." And then instantly it was like a kind of a courage flooded through me. I wish I could tell you that I got very bold and preached a great sermon and got everybody saved, but I didn't. It was just courage to go through what was before me. And so these men strapped me down now. And this individual, by the way, before they strapped me down, they asked me one more time, "You can renounce him now." And I said, "No, he's the Lord of all." And I knew that He had saved me in the dream because of the prayer and the thing with that older man. But when I looked at him, I knew now. And I can tell you, folks, I know for a certainty He is the Lord of lords and the King of every king. And I'm telling you, where the Scriptures say, every knee will bow, every tongue will confess His Lordship, whether in heaven, on earth, or under the earth. When I saw Him, there is not one knee, there is not one tongue that will not confess His Lordship, regardless of what side of the coin they are, when He reveals Himself to them. Every knee will bow.
So I laid down on the guillotine, and I told the guard guy that was about to strap me down that I would pray for him and that I forgive him for any and everybody, and just get ready to meet the Lord, because I knew I was about to, and I was really excited.
Then they strapped me down and they said, "You can renounce him." And I said, "No, I can't renounce him because he's the Lord of all, and he should be your Lord." That was my great sermon.
They let me do it. They didn't put a bag over my head, and they let me lay down on my back instead of laying down on my belly. And when he dropped the guillotine, it never hit me before. I flung up right out of my body, kind of like a firework. And being absent of the body is being present with the Lord. And I felt the best feeling I've ever felt in my life. And then, of course, I woke up.
When this man cut my head off, as soon as the very instant I saw the sword coming down and it touched my neck, the moment that the blade touched my neck, I was gone. I felt no death whatsoever. And